The Tale of Icarus and the Sun. Chapter 1. Prisoners. The island of Crete has always been a land of mischief and anarchy. This chain of destruction and chaos was under the heavy hand of no other but the ruthless and hot-headed leader, King Minos of Knossos, who in his rule allowed the Minotaur, a monstrous beast that is half man and half bull, terrorize the poor citizens of the island and slice through the skin and bone of anyone who dared try rebelling against his majesty. Despite the madness that stampeded through the land on its devilish hooves, the island of Crete was a wonder to look at. There was a kind of magic on the island. Crystal blue waters, golden sands, and the sun. Oh, the sun itself was splendid. There was no winter on the island of Crete, no night, only constant sun and light. Its yellow threads shielded the land of its misery like a warm blanket, and its rays hula-hooped around the gloomy islanders in free-spun laughter, igniting a flicker of hope on their soulless, sullen faces with every trace of sunshine. To find love in such a hopeless place seemed impossible. It was a sin to love on the island of Crete. What made it a sin was a selfish desire of a love gone wrong in the life of the cruel king himself. His love for the fair maiden Sol, with her beautiful golden long hair and glimmering gaze, made Minos go into a crazy frenzy and lock her up, not in a tower, but worse, in a blistering hot ball swallowed up in red rings of flames high up in the sky. The sun, unlike King Minos, did not consider Sol as a mere prisoner to its heat and blaze. She was a daughter and a friend that helped the sun comb its lustrous mane and spread its lively light that the people of Crete desperately yearned for. Sol, who was now known as the goddess of the sun, was greatly admired by the islanders and even pitied for her lonesome fate. However, no one could do much about it, and Sol didn't really complain. Yet she yearned for a human touch that would make her feel alive again. But who could ever muster up enough courage to fly too close to the sun? And would he who has indulged in his own self-destruction even survive the sweltering fire that has now become her only refuge? On the opposite side of the island, Icarus, son of Daedalus, was dragged by his feet into the labyrinth, a tower whose name echoes a terrifying image of infinite passages knotted together with no real way out. The king relished in the fact that the prisoners who tried to escape could search forever and never find an exit, either choosing to die or become his henchman's dinner. Icarus has always been a free spirit. He was adventurous, bold, and as spellbinding as a serpent. He was one of the only Cretan men who could ever dare face the unjust king and single-handedly kill the evil Minotaur that the islanders were so afraid of. Although now sitting in a high tower completely isolated from mankind, he was only thinking of one thing: how lucky he was to have a window, and how beautifully the sun has flashed its golden rays upon his tired brow. The sun brought Icarus life just as it had brought life to so many others it touched. He observed the creamy amber-colored sky for what seemed like eternity, until his gaze fell on a pair of striking red eyes staring back at him in the haze of the now dimly lit sun. And in that glance he saw that his ambitions ran higher than these lifeless slated blue tower walls. It was too late. The sun has lassoed its velvety rays and flung him into the fiery pools of these two vibrant eyes. And then Icarus knew Sol. He understood her, muttering under his breath as he willingly fell into the open fire.
We're both prisoners then, aren't we?
Chapter 2. The Great Escape. For weeks Icarus observed the sun and its captive, ruminating over the endless dreams he has had of their escape and union. And as he observed, Sol did too. Icarus has awakened in her a feeling of ease, a feeling of mutual understanding. He fidgeted about the place in weary frenzy, looking as if a solution was hanging by the tip of his nose. It was there, but so far from reach, like she was to him. Months passed as the two lovers shared this forbidden love between the cold blue walls of Icarus' tower and Sol's yellow chamber of light, until a silver flash of white seagulls soared high over the oceanic blue sky, rekindling a twinkle of hope in Icarus's eyes once again. Those white wings were the color of Sol's and Icarus' dreams, that lifted them up from their prisons into a spiral of freedom, adventure, and joy. Seizing the opportunity before it was too late, Icarus extended his body out from his window in an attempt to catch one of these large birds that circled around the tower as if they were examining every brick, as if they wanted to be a part of Icarus's great escape. Chapter 3. Wings of Icarus. Sol eagerly watched Icarus pluck the white feathers of the seagull he had caught. He looked like a man with a plan, and she anxiously waited for it to come to life. Icarus was not sure if this was going to work.
It has to.
He would mutter under his breath.
This is our only chance.
And proceeded to work on his latest invention. Because his father Daedalus was a well-known architect of Crete, Icarus has taken after his father's ability of breathing color and creativity into everything he has ever invented. After a series of failures, the ravished soft feathers finally ceased being only a messy pile on the cell's dusty floor. They rested elegantly on the windowsill, glistening in all the shades of the island's colorful palette, from the pale blue tones of the skies, the azure Aegean Sea, and Sol's crimson blush that tied the whole natural scene together in a bundle of beauty and splendor. The darkness of his prison grew paler as intense droplets of light illuminated the heart of the room where Icarus was measuring the wings that he has created out of the magnificent white bird. Sol's light engulfed him infinitely, pushing him forward on his quest and quenching his thirst for what seemed like a mere fantasy. However, their dreams became as real and as true as the shining sun that was in full glow in front of Icarus's reflective stare. The wings were made out of the skeletal remains of the dead bird, closely intact with an array of fringed plumes as large and as brilliantly colored as the magical tufts of clouds, streaked with a chorus of grays, silvers, and golds. As Icarus put on his wings and leaned closer to the sky, he did not care about a single thing in the world but Sol, who worryingly motioned for him to come closer. Both Icarus and Sol knew the risks that came with diving headfirst into a sea of hungry flames. However, the tragedy would not lie in the possibility of being burned to a crisp. The real tragedy would lie in never trying to feel the burning light. For can you ever feel alive if you don't sail high enough? And can you ever truly love without sacrifice? And with that, Icarus stretched out his arms and soared high above the sky, beating the wind with his molting, waxen wings. Chapter 4. A Fatal Fall. Like a vision of a golden god he soared. The country folk who caught a glimpse of Icarus could have easily mistaken him for Apollo, strolling through the pink velvet clouds on his enchanted chariot. The blue sky that he once thought of as friendly became the color of murder, and the sun that once embraced him with the sweet grace of a meek gazelle turned into a roaring lion with sharp fangs and a tongue that stung as he drew closer to its gaping fiery mouth. This celestial uproar did not affect Icarus's flight. He rose higher and higher, extending his burned fingers to touch the rays that whipped him mercilessly in search for his love, Sol. Love was the fuel that kept him soaring as the feathers of his now bent wings were falling, one by one, like tiny snowflakes onto the murky waters of the Aegean Sea. It was his strength and it was his light. It was the only thing that allowed his skin to feel and his eyes to see. And what he saw was his determination to clasp the sun by its edges and hold it in his tired palms and finally be free. The gentle breeze dreadfully exploded into a searing, sweltering warmth that kept increasing with every stroke of Icarus's fluttering wings as he edged closer to the sun. Sol watched the burning spectacle that was unraveling in front of her and could not even cry. Her tears would evaporate from the amount of warmth emitted from the infernal heat of the sun before they could ever reach her cheek. Instead, the tears were stuck like broken shards of glass that reflected her beloved's gruesome fate, a lump of amber and ash where his wings once were, and a ball of fire swallowed up by the tides of a vast venomous sea. Nothing was left of the stubborn youth but the bird-like feathers afloat on the waters. Icarus has drowned. Chapter 5. Eclipse. Dangling her feet from her rounded yellow chamber, Sol looked down into the never-ending distance. The sea was mirroring her distress, becoming as wild as she with grief and sorrow. The sun has never been quite the same since. It grew dimmer and fainter each day, marking Sol's own plunge into darkness as she burned out and lost her light. A single tear escaped her eyes that mingled with the salty waters in a loud trickling drop. The tear seemed to awaken something deeply hidden inside of the mysterious sea, and in no time, a lofty surge of water cascaded up into air, reaching as high as to face Sol, the pale Cretan sun. Confused, Sol observed the miracle unraveling before her eyes. The waves opened their blue-green curtains, and it was a miracle indeed. Standing on the heel of the crystal-clear tidal wave was Icarus smiling at his son. He reached for her hand and took it. As he pulled her close, they consummated their love with a loving kiss, a kiss that tasted like the freedom, adventure, and happiness that they never dreamed that they could achieve again. Then, a gust of wind wafted the two lovers high up in the air as they floated hand in hand up into the boundless cosmos. The impending darkness that took place after the kiss terrified the citizens, for they never knew that night and shadow could ever exist on the island of Crete. They stayed inside as the cruel King Minos went outside to inspect the disorder and the rapid vanishing trace of light. Looking up into the pitch-black heavens from his tall tower, he witnessed a strong flash of light, almost exploding in the middle of the sky like a ticking time bomb. He shielded his eyes, but it was too late. Blinded by the intensity of the flash, King Minos fumbled around desperately in search for a little flicker of light. However, the darkness of his soul prevailed over his now absent eyes, plummeting him to his death. As they pulled apart from one another, none of them were mortal anymore. Icarus's body was drenched in crystal blue fire, and Sol's illuminated the light of 1,000 shining suns. Their union has formed a celestial darkness in the sky, the solar eclipse. Although they were polar opposites of one another, Icarus being the moon and Sol being the sun, their love only grew stronger with each passing moment as they ruled the kingdom of Crete from their heavenly thrones. No longer was it a place of destruction, but a place of love, happiness, and light. Sol and Icarus lived on forever up in space, swaying between the planets and the stars, spreading an amalgam of light and shadow onto our world. Now every time you go outside to bask in the sun, you will see Sol's glimmering eyes smiling back at you. And every time you dance under the pale moonlight, you would feel Icarus' laughter echoing in the darkness. Their love remains an emblem of purity to this day, a reminder of how far our own light can truly go. It only takes a leap of faith and a pair of wings. The end.